Board members, we're at the beginning of the public hearing on the rule R277-306. Ben Rasmussen, you're leading this. Are you going to go over safety and stuff?
Safety, no.
I'll do the safety. Okay. In case of emergency, you go east or to my right. If you're facing me left, out these doors, and you exit either north or south, which is right or left, you can see the daylight to leave the building. Restrooms are out these doors to my right and across the hall. For your safety and security, we have and I didn't get all their names written down, and I know one of them I'm forgetting. We've got a couple highway patrolmen here that helps us out during our board meetings, and we appreciate them being here today. So welcome. Turn the time over to Ben to go through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Huntsman. This is a public hearing today convened pursuant to Utah Code and Utah Administrative Rule. After we had 15 individuals submit a written request to the board for a public hearing regarding the new proposed R277-306 Student Support License Area Preparation Programs. My name is Ben Rasmussen. I am the Director of Law and Professional Practices for the State Board of Education. Pursuant to Administrative Rule R15-1-2, I have been appointed by the State Board Chairman to act as the hearing officer for the public hearing. Just at the outset, we have quite a few people here. We do have overflow seating in case you need it directly behind us in the lounge area or in room 156, which is in the finance department area. The new rule we're here to discuss was published in the Utah State Bulletin on November 1st, 2019. The rule was adopted pursuant to the State Board of Education's authority under Utah Code sections 53E-3-401 and 53E-6-201. The new rule was adopted as part of the board's efforts to update educator licensing and includes requirements for preparation programs for specialized educator licenses. There's a list for those in attendance to sign in if you are interested in providing public comment at this hearing. It is requested that if you haven't signed the list already, that you come sign that list at this time. We have the list at the head of the table up by Assistant Attorney General Brian Quessenberry. If you haven't signed the list and would like to be heard during this hearing, please sign that now. Please include your name, address, and the name of the organization you are representing if that is applicable to you. Kind of brief outline of how we're going to conduct the hearing today. We will first invite Travis Rawlings, our educator licensing coordinator, to give a short overview of the approach taken in drafting and adopting the new rule. After that, we will invite BJ Weller and Andrea Miller and a group of social workers who are here with them to present on behalf of the school social workers who requested this hearing. We're going to allot them 20 minutes for their presentation. With the remaining time, individuals will be allowed to speak. We'll determine how much time we allot based on how many people we have ultimately signed up to speak after the group gives their presentation. We're going to give first priority to any individuals who requested to speak beforehand by emailing the board secretary. And we ask that anyone that comes up to give public comment speak in the microphone. We are recording the hearing today. Angela Stallings, the Deputy Superintendent for Policy and Communications, and Travis Rawlings, the Educator Licensing Coordinator, are the USBE staff members who are familiar with the rule at issue and who can respond to requests for information by those in attendance in accordance with Admin Rule R15-1-4B. As the hearing officer, with the assistance of the board secretary, I will prepare a hearing record in accordance with the administrative code and transmit the hearing record to the board for its consideration at its next meeting. At the conclusion of this meeting, interested persons will still have the opportunity to provide written comments on this issue. We request that written comments be emailed to rule.comments@schools.utah.gov, and we ask that you submit any further written comments no later than December 13th at 4:00 p.m. All of the written comment that's provided will be included in the hearing record for the board to consider. So with that, we're going to invite Travis Rawlings up, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. In July 2019, the staff of the Utah State Board of Education distributed a preliminary draft of R277-306 to solicit public comment on proposed revisions to the rule based on the changes to the Utah Educator Licensing System detailed in R277-301. This rule details the requirements for educator preparation programs that prepare educators in student support areas. The draft rule included sections related to school counselor, school psychologist, speech-language pathologist, speech-language technician, audiology, and school social worker. Based on the public feedback received, the Utah State Board of Education staff proposed a first draft of R277-306 to the board in its September 2019 meeting that removed the section regarding preparation programs for a school social worker license. The result of this change would be that the Utah State Board of Education would no longer issue school social worker licenses. As this rule is scrutinized, there are two things that should be made clear up front. First, any individual that currently holds a Utah educator license with a school social worker license area of concentration will retain and be able to renew that license indefinitely. LEAs will still be able to claim such individuals in Cactus in order to generate the relevant state funding as long as they remain employed by the LEA. The school social worker license area will still exist in R277-301 and remain there until all such licenses are no longer in use, similar to how Utah phased out the middle education license area that existed for a time. Second, the procedures used to solicit feedback on the initial draft of the rule were not as effective as they have been with other rules. Such drafts are typically distributed to superintendents, charter school directors, HR directors, teacher associations, and the deans of education. Typically, these groups then distribute the rule to additional relevant stakeholders. Staff believes that a combination of the fact that the rule covered multiple areas of licensing, as well as being distributed during the summer months, resulted in the draft not being seen by as many stakeholders as previously proposed rules. The small amount of feedback that staff received on the rule regarding the school social workers section was inconsistent. There was concern regarding the language of the rule, as well as concern regarding the rule becoming a barrier as the demand for school social workers was increasing rapidly. There was also confusion regarding the distinction between the preparation of school social workers versus the preparation of social workers licensed through the Utah Division of Occupational and Professional Licensing. Finally, I'd like to provide some data to help frame this situation. The number of school social workers listed as employed by LEAs in Cactus is increasing dramatically. The total number of school social workers employed in Utah public schools in 2017-2018 was 143. Of these individuals, only 13 required a letter of authorization to meet the licensing requirements. The total FTE of school social workers currently employed in Utah public schools is 222. That is an increase of approximately 55% in 2 school years. Of these 222 school social workers, 42 required a letter of authorization to meet the licensing requirements that are established by this board. That is nearly a fifth of the total employed school social workers in Utah. And that concludes my statement.
Thank you. We'll invite Mr. Weller and Ms. Miller now, and we will encourage them. They have some other associates that will be with them that they will introduce. Let's see, I'm trying to pull up their. Give me a second. I'm trying to pull up your PowerPoint here. Nice. Here we go. Go ahead.
Welcome, and we're so happy to be here today. Thank you, Superintendent Dixon, and thank you, Board of Education members, for spending the afternoon with us as we talk about our position as educator licensed school social work and how we would like that to happen for all future social workers. So I'd like to introduce those who are speaking with you today. My name is Andrea Miller. I'm a school social work coordinator for Granite School District. This is Wayne Trice. He is replacing BJ, who's on a trip. He will not be here today. He is a social worker at Canyons District and a specialist. And this is Chris Brinkhurst, and he is in Provo District. Amber Woodward is a social worker in Granite District. And Laura Bonham is actually in Murray District. And we have Tammy Zundel, who is also in Provo District. So what we have been able to accomplish, because actually of this rule change, was a unification of all of us together and coming together and presenting our position for school social work as educators. So in front of you, you have some handouts, and I want you to take a look and make sure you're familiar with them before we get started today. My particular favorites are the letters from students because they are so cute. And we also have in the very back of your handouts is a proposal for possible verbiage as we move forward to including us back with our educator counterparts and colleagues. So, in November 1st, 2019, we had a school social work summit. And that was held with professionals from across the state that also hold our same position. And we wanted to share with them what was going on with the board rule. And many of them were unaware of the board change. So we took it as an opportunity to educate all of the members that were there as to how this board change would have an effect on our profession. And we took that opportunity to share our role as a school social worker, and we wanted to be able to come today and share why social work is important and why we would like to be included with our group of colleagues. So in Granite District, school social work is part of our college and career readiness department. And we all agree that we are preparing students to be ready for college, career, and life. And every year we have a theme that goes with our education. If you want to advance the slides, I'm going to have to remind you because I forget sometimes myself. And so we have a curriculum that we purchase and we teach out of for our students, and it's the Mind Up curriculum. So this is a curriculum that we use to help kids learn mindfulness in schools. We also purchased with our legislative money the book Say Something by Peter Reynolds. And the quote from this book that we have been inspiring kids from around our district, because we are looking for them to be using their voice, using their creativity so that they can say something themselves and that they can speak out. So as we looked at this book, we decided we wanted them to be prepared for good in the world. And that's what we try to do every day with our positions. So we believe our voice can inspire, heal, and transform, and our voice can change the world. So if you'll advance the slide. We united our voices across the district and across districts and in Utah for school social workers to be dual licensed by USBE and by DOPL. And today we're here to say something about our role and that we are supporting all of our students as we hold educators' license throughout the state.
You can advance the slide. Thank you. My name is Chris Brinkhurst, like she said, from Provo School District. And in true social work fashion, we want to empathize and recognize it's probably been a long day for you. So thank you for hearing us at the end of the day. We appreciate this time you're taking to hear our concerns and reasons to license school social workers with an educator's license. Unfortunately, the decision may have been made prematurely without proper research as it relates to the breadth and depth of its impact. We are grateful for this time now to present to you some feedback as a united school social work body. To answer the first and foremost question, why do school social workers need a Division of Occupational and Professional Licensing, or DOPL license, and a school social work educator's license? We want to make it clear that DOPL license allows us to practice mental health. We need this license to practice in any setting. So why an educator's license? We feel this answer is multifaceted, but can be summarized by simply stating, we are educators. More on this later, but we want you to know that the impact we want you to know what impact this will have on us, taking this away. So what does it do for us? First, those wishing to advance their career in an educational setting need an educator's license to pursue various degrees, such as those in educational administration. Second, it provides equality and protection in an educational setting. Those performing similar job duties to school social workers, such as school psychologists, have those protections if they qualify for that right for an educator's license. So do we. Their job description fits ours. In fact, it's just one aspect of our job, and I would submit that we fit that job description and do much, much more. We deserve the same protections within an educational setting. Our HR department has informed us that being captured in Cactus or having an educator's license with a Cactus ID enables them to track our licenses. Last and most importantly, an educator's license ensures specialized training. You will see from this presentation that school social workers fill a vital and important educational role that requires specific and specialized training. Taking away our educator's license takes away the mandate for training. Currently, school social workers obtain an educator's license by completing school-based internships and coursework at the university level. Taking this license away takes away the requirement for training and no way to manage it. We'd like to illustrate for you some of the specific roles school social workers fulfill across the state and why we need that specialized training. You can go to the next slide. This diagram shows differences and similarities in job roles of a DOPL licensed social worker and an educator licensed school social worker. In addition to practicing mental health, school social workers are involved in, but not limited to, attendance interventions, data collection, classroom education and presentations, individualized education plans or IEPs, services and related meetings, school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports, and have an understanding in areas of laws and policies such as FERPA, which protects student privacy, free appropriate public education, least restrictive education, and 504 accommodations. DOPL licensed social workers are not trained in these areas. These are education-specific areas that require specialized training. Imagine if a DOPL licensed social worker was asked to provide 504 accommodations and they did not fully understand 504 law. That puts students and administrators at risk. You can go to the next slide. Furthermore, school social workers are integrated into a school's multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS. At the Tier 1 level, which impacts 80 to 90% of students in schools, social workers with an educator's license are vital members of educating students on school-wide expectations, participate in restorative justice practices and education, and are key players in the conversation of school climate and safety. At the Tier 2 level, which impacts an additional 5 to 15% of student body populations, the school social workers inform decisions in meetings that discuss interventions for at-risk students, teach small groups that focus on social and emotional learning. They create, model, and inform individual behavioral intervention plans, or BIPs. And at the Tier 3 level, which impacts the rest of the student body or the highest acuity of student concerns, school social workers provide mental health services, return to school services after psychiatric hospitalizations, and even the special education referral process. We hope it is clearly evident that school social workers are involved in the educational aspects of school. The educational system, policy, interventions, and trainings that fully justify the need for dual licenses. A license that allows us to practice mental health, and an educator's license that allows for the rights, protections, and trainings as an educator. We'll now discuss further the impact of this decision as it relates to national trends with licensure and certification of school social workers.
Thank you. And I'm just going to kind of cut this a little short in interest of time. So this is a map of the states that we've been able to find information about on the licensing requirements for social workers in school. The blues represent states that do have additional requirements above and beyond a professional license. The pink are the states that have a professional license that can be hired immediately into a school. As you can see, our national trend right now is to move forward to more specialized training because of the impacts we just talked about and the different skill sets that are needed in schools. Of interest is Georgia, which is white. They were previously pink, and they have noticed that in their school system, they have not been able to meet the needs of students as hoped. And so they are currently looking, and just as we are, about what their licensing requirements will be, and they are looking at increasing those into becoming more of a blue state.
My name is Wayne Trice, and BJ Weller is in a warmer spot, so I'm going to cover for BJ. School districts across the state are looking to increase resources to support safe and healthy school initiatives. As you know, resources are sparse, and especially in rural communities. This graphic is a graphic that I created, and I got the data from Kristen Campbell, and it's pretty close to what Travis Rawlings was mentioning, that educator licensed school social worker is a growing trend, and that I counted 207 school social workers working in 25 school districts. The orange on top of that are those social workers that are working under letters of authorization, and I counted 51 letters of authorization across the state, and that included charter schools. And there are 14, I counted 14 school social workers in charter schools. So it is an increasing position as schools try to hire more school social workers to meet their needs. But for the increase in mental health supports to have an effective and equitable approach for all students, schools really have to stress a broad approach to service delivery, and those services really need to be embedded into the school system. Without that, increasing mental health supports would be a really narrow service delivery just within individual and small group counseling, because social workers doppel trained without any educators licensing support may not understand how to be most preventative and provide those supports to students that require more services. Maintaining a USBE license and participating in professional standards to render services in a public school will really support the goal of systematically implementing a broad approach to mental health supports. And removing professional standards will not only compromise USBE's goals of effective educators and teachers, leaders, but fragment the effort to really broaden mental health supports across the school. If you go on to slide 9, school social workers don't necessarily just mobilize resources, but we facilitate those resources within the infrastructure of the public education. This is significant because those services are then fully integrated in the school. And if you reference the article that you have in your packet, Why School-Owned Student Support Staff Are So Important, from the Center for Mental Health in Schools from UCLA, I feel like that document really captures it well. But we as social workers really encounter really well-meaning community members who don't have necessarily an education or full understanding of how we implement services in a least restrictive format. This graphic here illustrates a prescription pad from a doctor really making an effort to support that student. And a social worker embedded in a school can take this information, reach out to the community, and be a bridge to providing supports to that student in a way that fits within the public school infrastructure. Next slide there. So school social workers also navigate social and emotional learning. Social emotional skills are competency-based learnings. And although SEL doesn't directly provide mental health illness treatment, there is an overlap between SEL competencies that address all the toxic stress that students have that often precipitate a mental illness or an emerging mental illness. And school social workers approach SEL and mental health with a developmental and clinical expertise within that school infrastructure. And school social workers are, again, the bridge between mental health service delivery within the school infrastructure. And these letters are in your packet, and they demonstrate the impact that social workers have had on students.
Okay, I'm Laura Bonham. I'm from Murray City School District. I just wanted to share with you that as school social workers, we truly are educators. Within our schools, we teach our administrators, our teachers, our students, and work with their parents. Our schools are filled with amazing teachers that are great at teaching. They're highly trained and educated in things like science, math, language arts. And as school social workers, we are also highly trained and educated in things like social and emotional learning and trauma, restorative practices, evidence-based behavior interventions, social and emotional learning, suicide prevention, anti-bullying, and parenting skills. As school social workers, we seek to recognize the dignity of each student that we work with as we mesh that behavioral health need that they have with the requirements and procedures of the educational system. You can do the next slide. And this is from San Juan School District. We have, just in the back, they drove up for this presentation and to meet with you. And Matt Kais is the HR director, and Trevor Olson, Student Services Director. If you'll wave at us. Thanks. Okay. Their message was as follows. Social workers in rural communities use many of the same strategies as urban. They have proven themselves to be an integral part of our student support systems in San Juan School District. They remove barriers for our students. We'd like to see a future with additional school social workers that are approved for educational licensing within rural communities by having access to educational training remotely. Regardless of urban setting, you can go to the next one, thanks. Regardless of whether it's an urban setting like Murray City School District or a rural setting like San Juan School District, school social workers embedded into the school infrastructure are far more effective than with a narrow service delivery. Urban and rural school districts have the same public educational infrastructure that is necessary to support delivery to large populations. Let's see. Certainly, the DOPL license will provide a practitioner with a generalist knowledge of mental health assessments and interventions, but the educational endorsement will support these generalist practices within the school infrastructure. And then you can go to the next one. Last one. And this is just MIDAS and UEN that are accessible with an educator's license with current contracting teaching. And I need to let you go. But we appreciate these, but in the past, we have not been able to access these as much as like. And so one implication for school social workers is that we could provide modules to put onto these that could provide education for those in remotely in rural communities. Okay.
So we've emphasized the importance of training as a critical component of licensure in this presentation. Previously, the state rule outlining the process by which a social worker obtained an educator's license was limiting in accessibility. It required that social workers receive training and school-based internship during their graduate program, referred to as a Master of Social Work. We understand and are aware that this limited districts and created challenges in hiring, licensing, and training school social workers. Therefore, instead of doing away with all licensing and associated training, as a unified social work body, we created a proposal with R277-306-4 that allows for accessibility, affordability, and flexibility within districts to hire highly skilled, highly qualified social workers and ensure adequate training. You have a copy of the full proposal, and I'll briefly outline the key points and pathway for licensing within the proposal if you want to follow along with me. It should just read R277-506-4, School Social Worker. Section 1 outlines that a school social worker must graduate from an accredited or candidate for accreditation social work program that results in a Master of Social Work degree. Section 2 outlines the details for an associate educator license with an associate school social worker license area of concentration, which includes 1, earn a master's degree or higher in social work from an institution accredited by the Council on Social Work Education, which is the CSWE, and hold one of the licenses listed from the Utah Division of Occupational and Professional Licensing, which is DOPL, and those acceptable licenses are listed within the proposal. Moving on to Section 3, outlines the details for a professional educator license with a professional school with social worker license area of concentration, which includes all the requirements for an associate educator license with an associate school social work license area of concentration, and pass the required exam administered by the ASWB, which is the Association of Social Work Boards, and then along with meeting one of the following below. So one of those is successfully complete a school-based, board-approved social work preparation program. Number 2 is successfully complete online coursework through a school-based, board-approved social work preparation program, in addition to completing a minimum of 450 hours of school-based experience with an associate educator license, and then goes on to talk about the associate school area of concentration. The third section would entail a social work completing a 450-hour school-based experience with an associate license area of concentration that include the following. And these list rules of standards that we're talking about. And those standards would include conducting assessments of individuals, families, and systems related to student social, emotional, and behavioral outcomes, collecting and analyzing data to evaluate, improve, and expand the practice and services provided by a school social worker, along with working collaboratively with school administration, school personnel, family members, and community professionals to develop or maintain a positive school climate and increase accessibility and effectiveness of services. And then Section 4 is for out-of-state, those who are applying for Utah license out of state. So again, this proposal allows for accessibility, affordability, and flexibility within districts to hire highly skilled, highly qualified social workers and ensure adequate and necessary training required to be a school social worker. And I believe our time is up.
Thank you for your time, and we hope that you will, on January 8th, say something in behalf of having school social workers in all the schools throughout Utah so that we can help our students be inspired, healed, and transformed into global citizenship. Thank you so much.
Before you step away, we do have one special request to ask one specific question, which we're going to allow in consultation with Chair Huntsman. Member Lear, you want to turn her on?
We're not supposed to ask questions. We're just supposed to sit and listen. So this is a special dispensation. But I'm afraid you'll go away, and then I'll be left wondering about this. So I totally support you. I'm a licensed educator. I was going on 50 years. And licensed educator myself, I completely agree with this and I support you. But I think this ship sailed. I want to say, where were you 3 years ago when the board decided educator licenses are kind of expendable? They're kind of frosting. And now, if the board decides to say, wait, social workers are special and they really do need an educator license in addition to specialized training, the next group we'll hear from is our first grade teachers of refugees, or third grade teachers who teach autistic children, or physics teachers, AP physics teachers who need really specialized training. And all of the rationale that went into saying educator licenses are not that big a deal, we'll come back to rediscuss with every specialized group. And I want anybody who thinks I'm sorry to be so exercised about this, but if any one of you can say, why are you comfortable singling yourself out and saying, no, we're really different than those fifth grade teachers who teach refugees, and we need to have an educator license? Because I agree with you. So part of me says, sure, every group that comes to me, I'm going to say, yeah, you do need an educator license. And 10 years from now, we'll be back where we started. And they're kind of mad at me, I'm sure, because I wasn't supposed to make a comment. I was supposed to ask you a question. But can anybody tell me that tell me, why are you special? Why are you different than those second grade teachers who teach non-English speaking children reading?
We'll give you 2 minutes to respond.
To my 5-minute
Can I
question.
respond? I'd love to respond.
Yeah.
I think making that comparison between social work and teachers, social workers are trained in clinical skills, and public education is public education for all students. Teachers are already trained in basic public educational law and ways to reach children with curriculum. Social workers coming out of a generalist practice without a concentration in school social work don't have that much exposure to what happens in schools. And I can speak to this as I worked at Primary Children's for 15, 16 years as an LCSW, and then made the transition to schools. And it was a steep learning curve. There was a lot of information that I really thought I knew that I was not aware of. And making recommendations in a really narrow perspective took services away from a large group of students. And when I became much more prevention focused, and when I became focused on supporting students in their classrooms instead of pulling students out from curriculum and treating them individually, we had much improved outcomes.
Appreciate your answer.
Can I also say, had mentioned early in our presentation that we have a role that is almost identical, and then we go above and beyond school psychologists. And school psychologists right now also do have the education license, but yet for some reason we were pulled away from that license.
I don't know what happened 3 years ago.
Nobody has to have a license, an educator license.
It would be
Thank
hard.
you.
A locally trained
Yeah.
educator license supposedly is
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to the other members of the public who've requested to speak now. Thank you. Next up, we're going to invite Emily, I'm probably going to say this wrong, but I'll say Boyle. And after her will be Royce Van Tassel. 2 minutes. We're allotting 2 minutes for the remaining people to speak. Royce, you're on deck.
Okay. You were pretty close. Good. Thank you for the opportunity to.
Please state your name when you come.
I will.
So,
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Emily Blyle. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and the executive director of the National Association of Social Workers. We are the largest association of professional social workers in the state. The National Association of Social Workers opposes the R277-306, the rule to remove the educator license for Utah's school social workers. While we recognize that school social workers have duplicitous licensing, meaning they have both a DOPL and an educator license, we feel that removing the school social worker educator license will have some unintended repercussions for both students and social workers. Without consistent pathways and protections for school social workers, they stand to be the only non-educator professionals in schools without a cactus number, UEA collective bargaining power, or union representation. And this slippery slope towards disenfranchising school social workers in the school environment undermines all of our collective goal of attracting trained school social workers who embody the necessary core competencies and the unique perspective of helping students in the context of their school, home, and community environments. They also provide integrated interventions that are focused on primary prevention, and they seek to improve the individual and system factors that lead to academic success. Social workers are trained at both the micro and the macro levels. It's unique to our training. The National Association of Social Workers believe that school social work is a unique specialization that encompasses principles for multiple areas of social work practice. It provides a critical link between school, home, and community, and advocates for equitable opportunities for students. With that all being said, if the reason for discontinuing the educator license requirement for school social workers stems from concern about diminishing supply of school social workers, the National Association of Social Workers supports the alternative pathway that was presented to you earlier today by Tammy Zundell from Provo School District. We believe that preserving this educator license and creating an alternative pathway will simultaneously preserve the fidelity of training and address the shortage of school social workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Royce Van Tassel's up next, and then he'll be followed by Brenda Alley.
Good afternoon. It's always a pleasure to be here with friends. This is a conversation, as Board Member Lear pointed out, that is not exactly new. The basic contours of it have been articulated a number of times, and we appreciate, I represent the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools. There are 135 or so charter schools across the state. Not all of us have social workers. Some of us do, some of us don't. And the reason for that, those reasons are many and varied. Sometimes it comes down to how much can we afford in terms of the services that we want to provide and balancing the different resources. Some of it is just saying we don't feel like we need that. Sometimes we think we need this, and we appreciate the trust that this board has shown to all of those local decision makers in evaluating the specific needs of the student body that they're serving and saying, we need to have these resources. There's certainly in that evaluation, no one would suggest that the skills that one gets from having a separate social work license and a teacher's license are somehow bad, that they're not valuable. But as we weigh the different needs that students have in our schools, sometimes we look and say, we only need this or we only need that. And so we appreciate the trust that you as a board have expressed in the ability of those local decision makers to decide what's best for those students. Thank you.
Hey, Ms. Alley, and then she'll be followed by Cindy Phillips.
Hello, board members. My name is Brenda Alley. I'm a school social worker at Hunter High School in West Valley City, Utah. I have been at I've been at Granite School District for 16 years. I've worked at Hunter High, I've worked at Kearns High School, I've worked at Granite High School, I've worked at Horizonte, I have worked at Cottonwood High School, and I've worked at Valley Junior High School. Currently, I'm full-time at Hunter High. I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about my day today so that you can get an idea what a school social worker does. I started the day out in the parking lot with a student that is qualified as emotionally disturbed. He has autism. I believe he was having hallucinations in the parking lot. I brought him into my office. I calmed him down. I got him back down into the unit school, or the unit classroom. And then I came back upstairs and I had a text message on my phone saying that we had a girl that overdosed in our school and I needed to come to the office of the principal and help them get a hold of mom and take care of her. So I went up there and I sat with this girl who had overdosed on her grandpa's medication while we waited for her mom to show up. And then I put her in the wheelchair and walked her to the car with mom and gave mom my information to email me when she was done talking to the doctor and let me know what happened. Then I came back into the school and I saw a girl that had left yesterday with extreme anxiety. And I talked to her to make sure that she was okay today. And I emailed her teachers because she's stressed out that she has to perform in front of some classes, and I talked to her teachers about making accommodations for her in the classroom so that she feels comfortable in school. Then I talked to a student whose father died almost a year ago. The death date will be Saturday, and she's having an extreme amount of grief. And we talked, and then I sent an email to every one of her teachers telling them what was going on. In fact, I got an email from her English teacher saying, thank you. This information will make it easier for me to make accommodations for this student in class. Then I saw a student whose mom is a drug user and who lives with her grandparents. She was removed from home by DCFS. And I talked really quickly to her. Is that it?
Wrap up.
Okay. I just want you guys to know that I'm a school social worker. I'm going to get emails from the girl that's at uni from her doctors that ask for services. And what I tell those people when they call all the time is, I'm a school social worker. This is not a mental health facility. This is a school. And I'm telling you guys now that we are school social workers. We work in the schools. We are not a mental health facility. Yes, we do mental health, but we are working within the school boundaries. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Ms. Phillips, and then Michelle Crump-Hart will be on deck.
Cindy Phillips. I'm the executive director of the Weileman School of Discovery, but I'm actually here as a member of the USSA Rules Committee and representing superintendents in Utah. I love these wonderful individuals who have dedicated themselves to supporting students in Utah, and I'm encouraged by the increase in the number of social workers in schools, which I see as a function of the school-based mental health grant provided by the legislature. And I hope that nothing I say is misunderstood or misconstrued as to denigrate, criticize, or minimize the value of those individuals who have both a license in social work and in education. I really like the flexibility as presented by R277-306, and I'm speaking on behalf or in favor of that draft rule that does not require social workers in schools to have educator licenses. I have found in my school and broadly in the schools with which I work that school social workers and other clinicians who, remember, work on teams of teachers and administrators, they are not typically working alone, have had rigorous professional training within their field. They typically improve the professional standards of the team regarding relevant permissions, confidentiality records, parental notification, liaisons with community and resources groups, institutions, and actions related to potential outside and external supports without an educator license. They also understand more than many of us who have educator licenses the protocols related to introductions and intake at schools vis-a-vis parents, outside mental health professionals, community resources, et cetera. At my school, we have a student engagement specialist who does have a Cactus ID. She is a teacher, and she's also the advisor of our Hope Squad, which is a suicide prevention group. We have access to a clinical social worker who is licensed as a social worker with UHealth and gives volunteer service at our school through that organization, and she does not have an educator license. She has been invaluable. We have a school nurse who has no Cactus or Doppel number, but an RN license.
Please wrap up.
And a school counselor who has a Cactus ID that is in process as she is coming from Texas. I would simply say that with the exception of some very specific policies that I've had to train my people on related to observations and support for non-contracted individuals, educator rights policies, and health and human sexuality, that rather than detract from these licensed individuals who are not educator licensed, have added greatly to our student services and to the educational team with which they work. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Crump-Hart, and then she'll be followed by Terry Shoemaker.
Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Crump-Hart, and I'm currently at Midvale Middle School, Canyon School District. I come to you today as a parent of a child who was raised and educated in Utah Public Schools, and I come to you as a 34-year veteran of the public school system. What I brought today was a couple visuals because I hear that we weren't real sure who all this went out to. So I went to my teachers and I said, what does this mean to you? And they don't know. They look at this and they're like, well, let's see. You know, here's your occupational life. You're a licensed clinical social worker. And they're not sure. You know, they're like, okay, it means that you have a license and you're a clinical social worker. And then I show them my professional license, and I hold this up, and this is displayed proudly in my office, and I have to say I've held this for 20 years. And I moved out of state. I retired with Weber School District. I moved out of state and returned to Utah about 4 years ago. And they looked at this and they said, this means you speak our language. This means we know what you're talking about. This means that we can have discussion with you, and you're not just another person walking in our building telling us how to run our classrooms with no knowledge of what a school does. This means that I can trust that you are looking out for the best interest of our children, and that you're going to help us as teachers, not tell us what to do, but you're a part of our team. And I serve on interdisciplinary teams, and we meet, and we do have a clinical social worker on our board, on our teams, and she is there to gather information, but she has a hard time because of her HIPAA compliance sharing information. Me as a bridge, I said, what am I? And they said, you're a bridge. And I believe I'm a bridge. So I hope that you consider a support to oppose this, just because teachers want this in our offices. They want to know. We don't have a classroom to say I'm an educated professional. We have an office. So thank you for hearing me today. And we want to put out quality, not quantity. So please remember that even though we'll have more, we want quality. We want to know that we know what we're talking about. So thank you.
Terry, and then Terry will be followed by Koki Klein.
Good afternoon, board members. Terry Shoemaker. I represent the Utah School Boards Association, the Utah School Superintendents Association. I'm going to speak in favor of the rule as it presently exists and for certain reasons. Very few people have talked about school shortages and the need for appropriate educators, associated, licensed individuals to work with schools. We are in that era right now, and that era is significant, as was represented by Mr. Rawlings when he spoke. 42 of the licenses for school social workers are on letters of authorization this year. 42. 2018, it was 13. In 2019, it was 23, and now it's nearly doubled to 42. There's going to be another $10 million infused into this program this next year. It's going to happen just naturally through the legislative process. They set the money aside knowing that they would put it in place again. The need exists all across the state for us to have appropriately licensed individuals. I think our educators that are licensed social workers here today that hold both licenses have presented some compelling arguments for doing both. But I want you to understand that doesn't necessarily solve our problem today. And the reason such effort was put forward in the legislature to get additional mental health support for teachers and students is the fact that we have such a significant problem dealing with that in our schools today. And so we're supportive of the rule as it exists. We recognize that this is a change for those that are currently in the system, but we'd like to meet the needs of our students today. Thank you.
Mr. Klein, and then he'll be followed by Judy Peterson.
My name is Koki Klein. I'm a school social worker. I'm a father of 7. I'm here representing my children, my wife, my community. And I've worked for Provo School District, for Granite School District, and Alpine School District currently. In 2001, I remember my first referral from a teacher. The teacher asked me to go take a student for a walk, that the student had been hearing some voices. I asked the student, what are the voices telling you? He tells me, they tell me to kill people. And I thought, oh boy, what did I get myself into? Years later, I wish I would have had training that I've had along the way. And I think that you have a great position to provide that for those school social workers starting and those current school social workers, for both suicide evaluations and for threat assessments. There's a critical piece for crisis evaluation. Today I met with 2 students doing suicide assessments, and I did a threat assessment, working closely with families and law enforcement. I'll tell you what, you have a great opportunity to not only help increase this ratio, as he had mentioned, of that 1 to 250, which NASW recommends, 250 social work students to 1 social worker. We're not there yet. I don't know if we'll be there in a little bit. But those who are in the schools doing the work every day, we need additional support. We need additional training. And this rule, as it is, it doesn't provide that. You take your voice out of it. In collaboration with higher education, you can help provide that framework for those families like my own. I had my own son with his own mental health concerns. Navigating the system is very hard. So being able to do that and be supported by a professional in the school with an educator's license who can do those crisis evaluations according to the law of the state is very important. To me as a parent, I work every day knowing that those are somebody's kids out there. I'm going to do my best to be thorough and to be well with it. So thank you for your time.
Ms. Peterson, and then she'll be followed by Jay Blaine.
Good afternoon. My name is Judy Peterson. I'm the Director of College and Career Readiness in Granite School District. I reside in West Valley City, where my children have grown up and attended schools in that area. I just want to comment briefly on Mr. Shoemaker's comment. We're experiencing a shortage of personnel in all areas of our work in education. We can't single out social workers. If you look at our Granite School District website, which posts positions on any given day, we have openings posted for social workers, psychologists, counselors, teachers. Every area of our work, we're finding shortages. I sit on a mental health consortium that we have organized as part of our Granite School District structure. And on that mental health consortium are licensed social workers who work in agencies. For the first time in their experience as professional licensed clinical social workers, headhunters are after them to try to coerce them into other areas of school social work outside of the agency setting. So I just wanted to make sure that this isn't a decision that's made based on need. We have a need everywhere. In Granite School District, we have the privilege of staffing close to 30% of the social workers in the state. We staff them in our pre-K-12 comprehensive school counseling program. We have part of the elementary counseling grant through the State Office of Education, wherein we have elected to hire social workers in those elementary counseling positions. We are currently staffing at 1 to 1,000 in school social work and 1 to 350 in school counseling, and that's pre-K-12. We need social workers, we need their educational license, we need their educational expertise because we work in an education setting, not an agency setting. I think that's all I needed to say unless Ben would give me another 30 seconds.
Well, you were my neighbor all my life. So
Yes,
I'd
I
love
was.
to,
And his primary teacher. I can tell you things about Ben Rasmussen that he would
Your time
not
is
want me
up.
to know. But I just really do appreciate this opportunity. And you know, sometimes it takes something like this to bring people together, to really think about their purpose, to think about their excitement, their enthusiasm, and their passion. And I'd like to think in terms of advantage all licensed educators in our state. They're great people, they're well-trained, and we appreciate so much their work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Jay Blaine with the Utah Education Association. And I'd also like to make a comment about the shortages. We believe that the way to address shortages is not by lowering the bar for qualifications. This is not necessarily the best way to respond. I would applaud the board earlier on your funding priorities in setting the bar high on that. With the right resources, districts can respond with local control on addressing priorities in staffing in the necessary areas. I was speaking with my colleague from Salt Lake District yesterday. He says they have 19 open teaching positions right now in Salt Lake School District. And it's because of resources, not because okay, let's just lower the qualifications and do that. The social workers with whom I have spoken have told me that, and you've heard a few of these things, but the educator license gives them the room for professional growth to be able to move into areas of supervision. One of the people who gave the presentation is the coordinator or the supervisor over all of the social workers in the Granite School District. Would that be possible without the education license that they have now? At a minor point, but an important point is which salary schedule would they be paid on? the education license, like the one who showed you her license, the teachers feel that they're part of the school community. Makes them a part of the community, helps them be in there. And that support for teachers is incredibly important. Students need this support. The job of a teacher is very difficult. Coming from a teacher background myself, having students that can have someone that can give them assistance when they face difficult and life-altering crises, this support is immensely important. And that background, that clinical experience in the schools is immensely important as well. Please have them maintain their license. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, we will conclude this portion of the public hearing. The board appreciates the public's input on this important issue. The board secretary and myself, we will assemble the complete hearing record for the board, which will be provided to board members for their consideration prior to the board's January 8th meeting. I want to remind the members of the public here that the public has the opportunity to provide written comments for the board's consideration. We request that any written comments be submitted to the email address rule.comments@schools.utah.gov, and that this should be done by Friday, December 13th, 2019 at 4:00 p.m. The hearing is now adjourned.
My job's the same.